My name is Graham Alexander. I'm from a company called BuildAid. These seminars have been, it's an initiative by Century Property Group to assist property owners who's bought property within their different developments. I think it's a great initiative. BuildAid's in the business of building technology, so we present these seminars, and we also assist in the guests that come and chat to us. And this morning we have Julia Matapolo from the NHBRC. We've got Chantal Gladwin from Schindler's Attorneys, and we have Hugh Cranshaw from Cornerstone Wealth Management. The NHBRC, I think if you're about to start building or have started building, the name will be familiar to you. And Julia is going to give us an insight into what they do. With Chantal, we're going to be looking at different contracts that you might enter into when you're building and during the building. You know, sometimes we don't realize that it's not just a building contract. There are a number of other contracts that you might enter into. And then Hugh's going to talk us through insurance in this related backdrop of building and short-term insurance and so on. So the first thing we're going to do, or that I'm going to do, is chat to you about building costs. A statistic that's quite frightening is that 90% of all residential buildings in South Africa are 15% over budget. Now, that statistic relates to a lot of money, a lot of heartache, and so on. But why does that happen? Why are these buildings going over budget all the time? And if I tell you what happens in the commercial environment, it's even more scary when it comes to buildings going over budget. But in the residential space, the reason is we're not working out costs properly. We're not budgeting properly. If you budget to say this home's going to cost 2 million rand and it doesn't cost 2 million rand, why did it go wrong? You've either added things on that you shouldn't have, or you haven't budgeted correctly. One of the problems is we also get a lot of advice from the wrong people, like the butcher, the dentist, your friend that built 3 months ago. They're the wrong people to listen to. Things like, is it a double story is more expensive than a single story? It's not. A double story is cheaper than a single story. Energy efficient homes are expensive. They're not. We run a radio show on Mix FM every Wednesday evening. And last Wednesday we were chatting to the guys from Verbatim that make light fittings. And we took a three bedroom home, standard home with 2 bathrooms and so on, and worked out if we replaced the light bulbs, what would it cost and what would you save? The saving was 8,000 Rand a year. And the capital cost was worked into that, of replacing the light bulbs and that. So an energy efficient home is, yes, it's going to cost a bit more, but it's going to pay back in the long term. Finishes will break the budget. I'm going to show you something just now that just proves that. Finishes, yes, they can if you're going to use platinum taps and so on, but generally it's not going to break the budget. The structure will break the budget. So how do we go about, historically, how do we go about building? So this is the wrong way. Obviously there's some things that you have to do, like buy a property, dream up some ideas, think about finances, get some advice on your budget, but not from the butcher and your neighbor. Appoint an architectural professional for the lowest possible fee. That's where the things start to go wrong. Okay, get my plans approved, I'll pay you 10 grand. That's all I need from you. After all, it's just a drawing on a piece of paper. What is this? I'm not going to pay you 100 grand. The next thing is we give those drawings that you paid 20 grand for to 3 builders. Statistics show that 60% of the information on those kind of drawings is missing. It's not available. So we give the drawings to the contractors, and they come back and the prices vary dramatically. Of course they're going to vary dramatically. 60% of the information's missing. So they're pricing different things. But it also puts you in a bad space because you can't compare apples with apples. You don't know which one's right. And we tend to make the next mistake based on price. So we've got 3 prices, one's 3 million, one's 4 million, one's 2.5 million. We give the project to the 2.5 million one. He must be right, he's the cheapest. It's probably the wrong one. In fact, we've had cases come through our office where we would have that kind of variation and they're all too low. They would have all gone wrong. Okay, now let's have a look at the correct way. We buy the property, we get to finance. Now, this is the difference. You employ the architect to do the job properly. Now, the architect's not just there to draw plans. He's there to design, he's there to interpret what you want. He's there to make sure that the kitchen company is up to speed, the light fittings are in the right place, they don't bump into cupboards and so on. That's what he does. And that's what he's good at. And remember, when you appoint an architect, like anybody that you're going to appoint, talk to 3 or 4 guys. Don't go for the first guy. But an architect, if you've employed him correctly, you cannot put a value on it. That's how important it is. Unfortunately, if you look at a budget, you say, I've got 2 million. Now I'm going to pay an architect, so that's for me to build. Now I'm going to pay an architect 100 grand. We add it on top of the 2 million. It must be part of the 2 million. Unfortunately, banks at the moment in South Africa don't finance professional fees. So you can't go to the bank and say, I need to pay my architect 100 grand. It's not part of the deal. If you do a turnkey project, the building contractors make provision for the architect, so then there's a way around actually financing the architect. But if you're going to employ him, unfortunately, it comes out of your own cash flow. The architect will also assist in appointing other professionals, engineers, land surveyors, and so on, that are key critical to planning. Now, if the land is not surveyed properly, you're going to land up with, never mind the house possibly being in the wrong position, but your levels and gradients and whatever can be a bit of a mess. Engineers have to be appointed, but so many drawings are submitted to council saying to engineer's detail, he signs his certificate, nothing's been designed. We know it's a concrete beam, but we don't know how big it is. How did you price that? How did you quote for something that just says to engineer's detail? So the engineer needs to be very much part of this design and costing team. Submission of plans for approval. That would, whether you employed the architect correctly or not, this is a process you have to go through. Only an architectural professional can submit plans by law. Engineers can't, homeowners can't, only an architectural professional. And an architectural professional includes an architect, a senior technologist, a technologist, and a draftsman. But in that hierarchy, a draftsman would be allowed to do a lot less than what an architect would do. If there are any relaxations over building lines, getting permission from your neighbors, the architect would be included in that. Then paying connection fees. Point 7 is probably the most important part of the process. If you have a proper set of drawings, you can now give these drawings to a quantity surveyor or to a company like BuildAid, and they will measure everything you need to build the house. So if they're saying it's 2.369 million and you need so many bricks and so much sand and so on and so on, you have exactly what you need. And if something's missing on the drawings, BuildAid would assume something. So maybe you don't have the skirtings on your drawings. We can't measure a drawing unless we measure everything. So we would put skirtings in. might not be the right one, but at least the homeowner now go, oh, skirtings, I didn't even know what skirtings were. If you look at drawings, 100% of the drawings we checked in November, there weren't a lot of drawings, there were about 24 of them, I think. Just a group of us said, let's have a look at whether we can see skirtings and windowsills. Not one of those drawings had that on. And some of them were quite good drawings. We took another 10 projects and said, the footings, which is your foundation holding the wall up, what is the actual size of a footing? And we took 5 drawings that were all different. So when measuring from drawings, a drawing in the first place needs to be quite accurate, but more importantly, you've got quantity surveyors and estimators that will adjust accordingly so that the information you're working on to go to tender is correct. How many people here are about to start building or have just started? And how many have finished building? Okay, so there's a lot of us here are still thinking about building. Is that fair comment? There's a lot of people just thinking. Okay. There's something you're going to bump into eventually, and you may have already bumped into it talking to your friends and that. Is PCs. They say, oh, your kitchen PC is too low. Your light fitting PC is too low. It's a commonly referred to term indicating a budget. So I've got so much money on light fitting, so much money on my kitchen, and so on. I won't get into the technicalities of what's a PC and a provision. They're basically the same thing. One includes labor, the other doesn't include labor. But you can be manipulated. So on your quote that has a bad set of plans and no bill of quantities or estimate, you could go in there and say paving PC, 12 grand, kitchen. Kitchens, homeowners are generally quite savvy to what a kitchen costs, but you could go cupboard so much, sanitary ware, and manipulate this down by 200 grand. You won't even know, but you're going to eventually find out that you need another 200 grand. That shouldn't happen. Identifying specialists. The architect's going to help you with home automation, energy efficiency, rainwater harvesting, flooring, lighting. It's an architect's job to work with these professionals. Going out to tender, I think I've said enough already. NHBRC, Julia's going to give us an insight there, and Hugh's going to give us an insight into insurance, and Chantel's going to talk to us about the contract. If we look at these 2 homes, and I'm just going to flash through both of them quickly. There's this one, okay, and the next one. They're exactly the same square meterage. They have exactly the same finishes. They have the same design spec. In other words, there are 2 of these. There's that kind of bath, that kind of toilet, exactly the same spec. Okay. This house cost 1.4 million or 8,337 rand per square meter. The other house, and the finishes are the same, 255,000 for both houses. This one's 9,529 rand. It's 18% more expensive than the other one. The reason is the external walls of this structure are more complicated, and the roof's slightly more complicated. It's got nothing to do with finishes. If we fiddled around with the finishes and that, we could easily make the one 30% more than the other. But if you put the 2 down and you're talking about square meter rates, how much are you going to charge me per square meter? Someone's going to get duped because there's an 18% difference. So we can't work on square meter rate. This, I just want to show you very quickly. It's a 20-page document, so we're going to fly through it. But if plans are presented to BuildAid for estimating or calculating costs, every single thing, literally down to the plug in the waste and the chain, is measured. Everything. And if there is something missing on the drawing, as I said a little while ago, it would be measured anyway, because you can't measure a drawing where there's things missing. but it would go through things like door frames, the different kinds of door frames, cement, bricks, concrete lintels are the planks that go above, windows is labor. BuildAid is a standard in the building industry when it comes to labor rates. And you may or may not be aware of a book that we produce. It's a tome of a book. It's like 800 and something pages on how to cost. Roofing, concrete slabs, plastering, and when you stop on the plastering and say, okay, we're going to put rhinolite in the internal walls, it's 740 square meters. So if we wanted to take it out or change it to Semcrete or something, it's measured. The electrical, all the different electrical points, and unfortunately a lot of drawings, the electrical hasn't been thought through properly. It's been put on there because of SANS 10400XA, that you need to have it on there to work out your energy efficiency. But we see light points that have been put into place where the kitchen's going to bump into the light. Plumbing, sanitary ware as well. Finishing carpenter, that's things like the beadings in the door frames, skirtings, cornices, cupboards, wine racks, that kind of thing, wall and floor tiling, painting, and again painting gets down to paint exterior walls. It's 1,606.5 square meters. So it's not guesswork, it's been worked out spot on. Glazing, site costs, flooring. Then there are some provisions here like the fireplace surround, things like that. Window frames, sanitary ware, down to the mixer, the doorstop, the plug, ironmongery is down to the doorstop. And that's just a summary. So a very, very quick overview of that's the level that one needs to go to. Because once you have that, you give that same document to 3 builders. Now you can compare apples with apples. It's not this 40% of the information missing. And the profit is shown. It's not, you can't hide your, why are you hiding your profit? There's nothing wrong with making a profit. A lot of builders come back and say, where's your price? Oh no, it's in my price. Where in your price? That's my cost, that's my profit, that's my handling fee, and so on. Now you can compare apples with apples. And make a decision on which builder you're going to use based on the relationship and that builder's ability to do or complete your project, not based on his price. Appointing people based on prices tends to be a little bit short-sighted and lands up a bit of a disaster. Okay, does anybody at this point have any questions? There are a number of contractors that offer a service where you would consult with the contractor rather than the architect. Obviously the architect still has to submit the drawings and everything, and the contractor limits you to some extent on what you can and can't do with regard to finishes and so on, but they give you a fixed price and say 3 million rand, you can go overseas, when you come back we'll give you the keys. It's making building, if you like, a little simpler, but they then employ the architect, which can be tricky. Because the architect should, if he's on site, he plays another couple of roles where he shouldn't be reporting to the contractor. But I don't want to get into too much of that. But it's a fixed price sort of contract. There's no such thing as a square meter rate. As you can see, these two, one's 8,300 Rand and the other one is 9,500 Rand. And they're both same square meterage, same spec, same design spec, same finishes, and they're not, and they vary. Each house has to be worked out. But when you're starting out and you want to go talk to your architect or whatever, you've got nothing else but a square meter rate. So it's very difficult to say, well, I don't have a budget because I don't have a square meter rate. But if someone forced it out of me, I would say that you need to be. Let me thank Julia from the NHBRC, thank you so much. Chantel, thank you so much. thank you so much. And to you guys for being here this morning and being informed about building. We're going to have a number of different seminars through the year, different subjects. We're doing insulation, I think, coming up quite soon. But Century will let you know through email when these seminars are coming up. And we'll all be here for a while after this. If you want to come and chat to us, ask us any questions, we'll be here for a while. Thanks very much for listening.